I had both hands in the air when he said it. Stop moving or I'll put a bullet in your head right now. Sun blasting straight into my eyes, hot Texas afternoon traffic stacked on Highway 74, 3 county deputies aiming guns at a woman in jeans and a t-shirt beside a black SUV with a faded Army sticker. And that woman was me, Colonel Maya Coleman, United States Army, standing there thinking, this is basic, just follow the commands, you know the drill. You've taught this drill. Stay calm, go home, call mom, maybe laugh about it later. I said as steady as I could. Officer, I'm complying, my hands are up, I'm unarmed. Gave him the same calm tone I used in war zones when I was the one holding the weapon, but the lead deputy, Brad Kincaid, just looked at me like none of that mattered. Snatched my military ID out of my hand, glanced at it for half a second, then flicked it down on the asphalt so it spun between us, and somewhere behind him a kid in a minivan said, "Mom, why'd he throw that?" while half a dozen phones were already up and recording. He stepped in close like it was personal gun, never lowering, and I still remember this tiny voice in the back of my mind going, he's not really going to pull that trigger. Not here, not with all these people watching, not in broad daylight, right? And then he pressed the muzzle up toward my left ear and the world exploded in white and then dropped into complete silence. If you rewind that day, it started out picture perfect, the kind of morning you wish you could freeze clear sky over coastal ridge. Army base flags, snapping kids chasing each other between folding chairs, the smell of coffee and sunscreen, and me in full dress uniform trying to pretend my hands weren't shaking while they pinned a new rank on my shoulders 20 years in, and I was finally stepping into that colonel space people had said I'd never reach, not quietly anyway, not as a black woman in a system that still likes its leadership to look a certain way, you know what I mean? They called my name Lieutenant Colonel Maya Coleman, and then Colonel Coleman, and I walked out onto the parade field hearing my boots on the turf. Feeling every eye on me, seeing my mom's face on a tiny phone screen in the front row where one of my soldiers was streaming so she could watch from back home. Captain Jordan Ellis pinned those silver eagles on my shoulders and said into the mic, "Some people lead with volume. Colonel Coleman leads with gravity." And people laughed and clapped, and for a second, for a real honest second, I believed maybe the work had finally outrun the doubt. They talked around the hostage situation without saying too much on the mic. But everyone in uniform out there knew the story. A few months earlier in Balen County, a guy with a rifle had locked his pregnant wife in a living room and sworn nobody was leaving that house alive. The local deputies were freaked out, hearts pounding, fingers twitching near triggers. I was nearby on a joint operation, so I walked in unarmed, sat on the edge of his chaos and let him rant, let him pour out his fear, his anger, his nonsense, talked him all the way down from "we die together" to "the baby deserves better." Got him to set the gun on the floor, step away, let the medics rush in. His wife, Jada, and their daughter survived that night because someone decided to talk before shooting, and I remember going back to base, peeling off the vest, writing the report like it was just another Tuesday, having no idea that her husband, Deputy Eric Lawson, would one day stand on a highway and watch another man aim at my head. After the ceremony, I did what every promoted officer does. I became a walking photo booth. Kids tugging on my sleeve asking, "What's that one mean? What's that ribbon for?" A teenage girl in a JROTC uniform pulled me aside and whispered, "Ma'am, do they respect you more or less when you're the only woman in the room?" And I told her the truth. At first less, then once they realize you're not going anywhere, a whole lot more. Retired sergeants shook my hand, with that grip that says, "We've both seen some things," and parents thanked me. Like I personally tucked their sons and daughters into bed every night overseas. I answered every question, smiled for every photo, and tried to soak it in, because it felt like maybe finally life was lining up the way it was supposed to. When it wrapped up, I went to the locker room, swapped the uniform for jeans and a soft t-shirt, folded the jacket with the fresh eagles, and laid it neatly on the back seat of my SUV. Set my cap beside it like a little shrine to a version of me that still existed. Just not on the drive home, and rolled through the base gate with the guard giving me a sharp salute, the colonel's license plate catching a bit of sun as I turned onto Highway 74. The drive was nothing special in the best possible way. Traffic was thick, but lazy spring breakers heading toward the coast in beat-up sedans packed with coolers and beach chairs. Older couples towing campers at a pace that would test anyone's patience. Kids pressed to windows, music drifting from open sunroofs. I had my window halfway down, radio low, one elbow resting on the door, thinking about normal stuff, like my niece's history project and whether she'd actually read the books. I sent the young captain. I needed to email about boundaries. the phone call I owed my mother later that night, and I remember catching my own reflection in the rearview mirror, seeing the faint outline of where the officer's cap had pressed into my hair earlier and thinking, "You did it, you made it here, just drive home, enjoy the quiet." The quiet ended with sirens not behind me like a regular traffic stop, but slicing from the side like someone dropped a movie car chase into my lane. I checked the mirror and watched two Bayland County Sheriff SUVs weaving way too aggressively through traffic, forcing a pickup onto the shoulder. Cutting off a minivan so close, the mom in the driver's seat jerked the wheel and mouthed something that didn't look like, "Good job, officer." They closed the distance faster than made sense for any normal call, and before I could even process it, one SUV swung in front of me, braking hard while the other boxed me in from the left, squeezing me against the concrete barrier. Training showed up before fear did. Hazards on engine off, keys on the dash window, slowly down, hands up on the steering wheel, fingers spread. I've taught soldiers how to survive checkpoints. I've told them 100 times, let people see your hands move slow, leave no room for misunderstanding. So I did exactly that. Hands up, high, shoulders back, voice ready. Kincaid came out of his SUV like he was storming a house, not walking up on a car gun. Already high, not low and safe, not cautious but ready. His face red like he was already mad before he knew my name. Deputy Tom. Mercer mirrored him on the other side of the hood, a beat slower, a little less steady, and Lawson climbed out of the passenger seat and just kind of froze for a second, like the moment hadn't quite caught up with him. I could see him taking in the colonel plate, the army sticker, my hands up, the crowd already watching. "Officer," I called calm and clear. "My hands are visible. I am Colonel Maya Coleman, United States Army. I am happy to comply. Please tell me what you need me to do." And I watched it bounce off Kincaid like sound off a wall. He walked up close, stared at me head to toe, then down at my plate and back at my face. And he smirked that slow, crooked smirk that says, "This is about power, not safety." "Out of the car now, save the war stories. You people always got some excuse." And the way he said "you people" told me exactly what he thought he was seeing. Not a colonel, not a neighbor, just a black woman behind the wheel of a nice vehicle on a sunny day. I moved slow, telegraphing every inch. Opened the door with 2 fingers, kept my other hand up. Stepped out, feet shoulder width apart, the way they teach you in those how not to get shot videos. We pretend aren't required viewing in my community, and the heat of the pavement came through my soles. The sun bounced off the white lane markings. People leaned out of their cars, phones already pointed. A little boy in the minivan next to us was crying into his mother's shoulder saying, "Mom, she didn't do anything." And the whole thing felt surreal, like I'd stepped out of my own life and into some rerun everyone else had seen before. Kincaid grabbed my ID, ripped it out of my fingers, glanced at the rank, and then for everyone to see, flicked it out into the road, the plastic hitting the concrete with this ugly little smack that somehow stung more than half the insults I'd taken in uniform. Someone in a nearby car gasped, "Did he just throw her ID?" And I felt my jaw clench, that familiar cocktail of humiliation and anger that comes from being disrespected on principle, not by accident, but I swallowed it because survival has a hierarchy and pride rarely sits at the top. "Sir, respectfully," I said, hands even higher now, "I am complying. I do not consent to any search, but I will obey your instructions," trying to keep it so textbook that any future video review would have nothing to question. And still he just started circling me, gun never wavering, like he was hunting for a justification he hadn't earned. From the helicopter footage, I've seen the top-down version. Now the SUV doors hanging open. Traffic stopped in both directions. My palms open. Fingers spread like I was trying to show the sun itself. I meant no harm. Kincaid stepping back like he'd calmed down, holstering for half a second, then pulling the gun again, stepping in so close that the barrel almost touched my ear. No flinch from me. No sudden move. Just his choice, his finger, his trigger. That's the twist the whole world later argued about. But let me tell you what it felt like from inside my skin. There was a flash of metal in my peripheral vision, the taste of fear and dust in the back of my throat, the sense that the crowd was holding its breath. Then a crack so violent it felt like the air beside my head turned into a fist. I dropped before I even understood I'd been hit. The pavement slammed into my shoulder, warmth spilled down my neck. I opened my mouth to scream or say something I honestly don't know which, and nothing came out that I could hear, just a silent shape of sound that died between my teeth, and suddenly the whole scene looked like one of those old movies with the volume turned off, people running mouths wide, hands waving, but all I got was this deep, muffled roar like I was underwater with my head in a bucket. I remember seeing a man push through the others and drop to his knees beside me. Brown skin, tired eyes, a stethoscope still around his neck, moving with that calm speed that comes from seeing too much. His lips were moving, his hands were pressing gauze against the side of my head. One of the deputies tried to yank him away, and he shrugged him off without even looking up. I didn't know his name then, but later I'd shake Dr. Victor Hale's hand and tell him that playing trauma bay on a highway shoulder is a weird way to spend your afternoon. While the ambulance crawled its way through the traffic jam Kincaid had created, the videos were already leaving faster than I was. A 7-second clip of me standing with my hands in the air and him pressing a gun to my ear hit social media before the EMTs even loaded me up. Some local station grabbed the helicopter feed and cut in. Live people in grocery store lines watched it on overhead TVs, students saw it on their phones between classes, and up in Houston. An FBI supervisor named Lauren Kim watched it 3 times in a row. Closed her eyes for a second, then told her team, "We're going now before somebody cleans this up." I woke up in the hospital under harsh lights and that sterile smell that never really leaves your nose, my head pounding, my world wrapped in cotton. My mom on one side, gripping my hand, my commander on the other, looking like he'd aged 10 years in one afternoon, and a nurse holding a whiteboard that said, "You're alive. Left ear badly damaged. Severe hearing loss. We're so glad you're here." I nodded, felt tears on my face before I realized I was crying. And then someone handed me a tablet, and I saw my own body on that highway from 6 different angles. Rewind, play, pause, zoom, my name trending under a hashtag I never asked to be part of. And yeah, seeing yourself almost die on loop for strangers is a weird kind of out-of-body experience. While I was figuring out how to live in a world that sounded like nothing, Lauren landed her helicopter on the shoulder of Highway 74 and walked straight into the mess. Witnesses still hanging around, angry, shaken phones full of evidence, deputies huddled by their vehicles, trading stories. You know that look people get when they're trying to memorize a lie together. She started with the basics: names, numbers, video copies, had people airdrop clips to a secure FBI device, had others email files directly to her, and then she walked over to Kincaid and asked about his body cam. He said what they always say, must have malfunctioned, trying to sound technical like he knew what he was talking about. She didn't argue, just took the camera off his chest, clicked the power button, watched it light up perfectly, then opened the storage and saw exactly nothing. No files, no corruption, just a blank slate that had been wiped clean not long before. On the edge of the scene, Lawson stood there shaking radio in his hand, eyes on the bloodstain where my head had been, and in his mind he wasn't on that highway anymore. He was back in that living room with Jada months earlier, watching me talk a man with a rifle into putting it down, watching me walk out alive with his wife and his unborn daughter breathing behind me. The twist of this whole story is not that a bad cop did a bad thing. People almost expect that. Now, as sad as it is, the twist is that one of the men in that uniform looked at what happened in broad daylight and decided he was done being quiet. That night he went home, sat on the edge of the bed while Jada held out her phone with the clip, paused on my face. "Eric, that's her," she said, voice breaking. "That's the woman who saved us. That's the woman you said was the calmest person you'd ever seen, and your partner just tried to kill her on TV. You really going to stand next to that at work tomorrow?" And something in him just snapped into place the way it does when you finally realize you've been standing on the wrong side of the line. The next morning, he walked into the temporary FBI trailer, shut the door behind him, pulled a beat-up flash drive out of his pocket and set it on Agent Kim's desk. "You didn't get this from me," he said, which is always how those sentences start. Then he sat down and told her everything anyway. 4 years of internal complaints against Kincaid, photos of bruises and busted lips, reports edited to sound cleaner, emails from Sheriff Dwyer telling folks to tighten up the narrative, Mercer asking younger deputies to polish the language before it hits the DA, all the small, quiet things that happen in the dark until something finally explodes in the light. By the time I rolled into the federal courthouse in Port Camden months later, the whole country had seen the clip so many times the jury probably could have sketched it from memory. I came in leaning on a cane, my balance still not perfect, my left ear bandaged under my hair, holding a tablet that had become my voice in rooms where microphones matter. People packed every bench not because they were hoping for a plot twist, but because they wanted to see if the system would finally say out loud what their eyes already knew. The prosecutor didn't give some big dramatic speech. He put one civilian video on the big screen, froze it on the frame where my hands are up, and Kincaid's gun is at my ear, and said, "This is the moment that matters." Then hit play, let the sound ring, let the room flinch, let the silence afterward speak for itself. And when the defense tried to spin their story about fear and sudden movements and blading her stance, he just rolled the helicopter footage at 1/3 speed and asked, "Show me where," and nobody could. When I took the stand, I didn't bother with trying to speak loud enough to hear myself. Instead, I propped the tablet on my lap, typed short sentences, and let the clear, neutral digital voice read them for the room. I complied with every command. It said, I deleted typed again. My hands were above my shoulders when he fired. Deleted. My hearing is gone, and it is not coming back. And somehow that robotic tone made the truth feel heavier, not lighter, because you can't accuse a tablet of playing the victim. Lawson put his badge on the table before he testified, which told the jury exactly what kind of day it was going to be. He talked about Kincaid's temper, about complaints buried in file cabinets, about the meeting the night of the shooting where the sheriff said, "If we hold the line, this dies down." And when the prosecutor asked why he finally handed over the flash drive, he looked straight at the jury and said, "Because my little girl is going to see that video someday in a classroom and I needed to be on the right side of it." And yeah, that happened, and it changed the whole temperature of that courtroom. In the end, the jury didn't take long. Kincaid, guilty on every count, civil rights violations, attempted murder, obstruction. Mercer, guilty of tampering and false reporting. Sheriff Dwyer, conspiracy and failure to supervise. I couldn't hear the words, 12 years, 8 years, 5 years. But I watched their shoulders drop and their eyes go empty and felt something in my chest unclench. Not joy exactly, more like relief, mixed with this bitter thought of, it took a bullet in broad daylight and 6 camera angles to get here. Out of that came hearings and panels and eventually a law they named the Coleman Transparency Act, even though I told them I didn't need my name on legislation to sleep at night. Body cams that roll from the start of a shift and stream to servers. Nobody on the street can edit independent oversight panels made up of judges, doctors, veterans, regular neighbors who watch high-risk encounters in real time. Tighter rules about when you can point a gun at someone who's unarmed and complying. Not perfect. Nothing human-made ever is, but at least something you can point to when people say, well, what changed? As my own life shifted into this strange second career, half healing, half teaching, I founded the Coleman Institute with a small team and a lot of stubbornness. We run trainings mostly outside on old academy fields, under open sun on purpose, set up a big portable screen and hit play on my shooting and others. Some where officers did it right, some where they didn't, and I stand there with my little tablet feeding a voice through the speakers and ask, at what second do you think this crosses the line? And watch cadets squirm when they realize there's no answer except, it never should have started like that. 1 year after the highway, we closed the median at mile marker 19 for an hour and placed a simple granite marker there facing the eastbound lanes, just waist-high, polished, with an inscription that reads, "She drove into the light. They tried to drag her into darkness. The light refused." When I walked up to it, cane clicking on the concrete, the thing that grabbed me wasn't the stone. It was that faint, darker patch in the asphalt behind it, where my blood had been. The crews had repaved and repainted. But in the Texas heat, the outlines still ghosted back through, like the road itself refusing to forget. Standing around me were Jordan from the base, Dr. Hale in a wrinkled polo, Agent Kim with her arms folded like she was still guarding the scene, Lawson and Jada with their baby girl on his hip. Veterans I'd never met, but who saluted like we'd served in the same unit. Regular drivers slowing down on the shoulder, rolling down windows, holding up their phones because they could tell this place meant something now. I pulled out my tablet one more time, connected it to a small speaker, and let it read the words I'd typed the night before. I thanked everyone for coming. I named families whose loved ones never got the clarity. My case did. I reminded them that laws with nice titles mean nothing if people stop paying attention. And I finished with the line that has been sitting inside me since the day I watched my own shooting from a hospital bed. The sun does not take sides, it only shows you what we chose to do. So that's my story. Not a movie, not a headline, just a woman who survived a decision she never earned on a highway she'd driven 100 times before and had to figure out what to do when her pain suddenly belonged to the whole country. And now I want to hear from you, because this can't just be me talking into the void. Have you ever seen something on the side of the road or in your neighborhood that felt wrong but you kept moving because you didn't know what to do? Do you think cameras really keep people honest, or do they just make the lies more complicated? Have you ever been judged by the way you look before anyone bothered to ask who you are? Drop your city, your story, your opinion down below. Argue with me if you want. Tell me what justice should look like when the sun is shining and everybody can see. And if you think these kinds of stories need to be told out loud, hit Like, share this with someone who still says, it can't be that bad. And subscribe so you don't miss the next conversation, because we're not done with this, not even close.